Good afternoon, guys. Happy Monday, happy March. This week, 5 out of the 15, so we're about to cover 1/3 of the semester. The time goes by very quickly, so let's take advantage of it. Today, I'm gonna give you, as always, feedback on what you submitted. I have a couple of items that I need to address specifically, and then I'm going to cover 4 chapters for today, a lot of information, and then remind you what we have for next week. I want to say it now, and I'm going to say it at the end of this video, that for next Sunday we have LO 13 all the way to 16, so 4 LOs. Office hours tomorrow from 8 to 12:30, from 4.5 hours. Log on and let's visit. Also this week, our second out of 6 synchronous meetings, Wednesday at 8 this time, right? From 8 to 8:45, let's visit, let's talk about how we're doing and what's coming. And if you have any questions about your PDO, FLO, I'm here for you. So let's do that, and also, get some extra points, extra credit. So I'm going to repeat that at the end of this video. So I'm going to go ahead now and share my screen. Let's go to our Moodle site. Hopefully. So yeah, there we are. So here we had to submit LO 10, 11, and 12. LO 10, an average score of 89%. So if you had an issue with the item that I was talking about, slides 42 and 43, watch the video, please, again. The answer is there. If you watch the video, I'm sure you understand why you didn't get it right if you didn't. LO 11, 74%. Third class levers are the most prominent in the human body. Okay. The second item here, you had an issue with the ones that had some kind of calculation. Obviously, there was one about the moment arm force in force. So it was about eccentric movement, and it was 250 with a moment arm of 0.05, and then you had a moment arm of 0.2. How much force? If you really think about it, the rotational force equals F times the moment arm. So you would have to, you would need something that would be multiplied by 0.2. And so you had eccentric movement that had to be a bigger number than the product of 250 times 0.05. So you had the options of 10, 12.5, 62, 250. And the force that would be higher, right, than 250 times 0.05 would be anything above 62.5. And the only thing that you had above 62.5 was the 250. So that was the one to pick. If you have any questions or I confused you even more, let's talk tomorrow on Wednesday. I'm going to try to help you draw it. Well, not draw it, just go step by step. And another was about the rods and again, rotational force and work. And the right answer was -30. The minus 0.5 rods per second was to show you the direction. So that was a minus. If you know that T equals W over time, so torque or the rotational force. So now torque was 20 and you had 1.5 seconds. So 20 times 1.5, that's 30. But because you had negative rods, the negative direction of the movement, you would need minus, you would say that the torque the work is -30. okay? So torque equals work over time, so work equals torque times time. So 20 times 1.5, that's 30, but the work was negative because you knew it was minus 1.5 rad per second. Again, if I confuse you with that, just let's visit tomorrow Wednesday, and we'll go step by step together. LO12, 79%. Spend a little bit more time. I see a couple of people that on average get a little bit lower score, so it looks like it's a little bit more challenging for them. Visit with me, talk with me, let me know. Okay, I'm here to help. All right, I'm going to show you what you have for next week. So you have LO13, 14, 15, and 16. I just said that. But also you see here the synchronous meeting, the second one. If you click on it, you can see the time, date, and the link. Right, 45 minutes, 10 extra points. Let's visit. All right, I'm going to stop sharing this. I'm going to start with our first chapter. PowerPoint slideshow for today, chapter 2. In the whole thing for today, you'll see how amazing our bodies are. So I'm going to cover a lot of information. I'm going to stop where I think I should stop, and things that are important or a little bit complicated for you to just go over them by yourselves. Let's start with neural mechanisms. All right, so we know that. We know CNS, we know PNS, right? Now, except for that categorization, you see that we can have afferent coming back, information coming towards the brain, and efferent, information leaving the brain, efferent with the E, right? Also, you can see, let's go start with afferent. Information is coming from inside of our body or from the external environment, okay? I'm touching something, light, temperature, pressure, things like that. Efferent now, information is leaving our body, and you can see somatic and autonomic. Somatic means skeletal muscle. Autonomic now, it has to do with sympathetic and parasympathetic. Okay, you know, fight or flight, and you know that there's specific hormones and all of this that we have talked about. But here we talk in terms of the nervous system. So nervous system can help us fight, also can help us relax. Okay. This is the neuron structure. We talked about it before. Signals are electrical impulses. I covered efferent and I covered afferent. And in between, we have interneurons. Okay, you know the neuron structure. We've covered it already. So here, we're going to spend a little bit of time how it functions. We have the AP, have an action potential. Right, the list starts from our brain and goes through one neuron to the other neuron, travels between them through the synapses, and we mainly cover the chemical synapses. So from one side we have the presynaptic neuron, there's a synapse there's a gap in between them, and then we have the chemicals that we release from one side, right, neurotransmitters, and then it goes over to the other side, okay. However, that's an EPSP, excitatory postsynaptic potential. However, we have another thing that's called inhibitory postsynaptic potential. So there are neurotransmitters that are trying to block depolarization, actually to block activating the nervous system, right? So let's put it in a way, there's some kind of positive and some kind of negative action. Something is trying to initiate movement, and something is trying to not initiate, to block that initiation. All right. Now, if we take the summation of all this, the pluses and the minuses, we'll have some kind of result, and then we'll know if we'll have an activation or not. Let me explain. A, we have one action potential that happens, right? And then, but you see that one increase on the based on time on the you have an action potential that actually um, activates. That's the word. The muscle fiber, right? B, we have three action potentials coming from different sources, different actions, right? Go to the same one, and they all together, again, they produce that one twitch that you see. C, we have three action potentials coming back to back to back from the same action. And you can see how it goes like, poop, 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 like it, I like my sounds. You see how it increases, right? And then comes down. The basic idea, you can see it on C, we have a threshold. Once we go over that threshold, that muscle will, fiber will be activated. It doesn't matter if it's at 0 or 30. If it's above minus 50, it will be activated. Okay? What I want you to remember though is that we talked about IPSP. So in a funny way to remember it is like somebody sleeping next to you, right? One person is trying to wake that person up, and the other person is singing lullabies trying to help him or her sleep. So that combined effect of EPSP and IPSP will define if the fiber will be activated at the end or not. Why are we sending IPSP? Why is it inhibitory potentials? Well, maybe we change someone, something happened, we'll see in a little bit. But we're not only sending potentials to activate. Sometimes we're sending potential. Our brain or our spine is sending potentials to inhibit. Remember that, that's important. Planning is important, and this is how happening through the CNS. Also, initiation is happening through CNS. Okay? We know what it includes. I'm not going to go into details. Cerebellum, cerebellum, encephalon, and brainstem. Cool. All right. Let's see what I'm going to cover from here. The Brodmann areas are an easy way to divide the brain into lobes. And so we can, let's say, locate different parts of it and then talk about them. So this is one way to do it, right? So we have the auditory cortex, the somatosensory cortex, the motor cortex, and the visual cortex. And then based on the location, we could say this is happening mainly there, this is happening mainly here. Also, you'll see in a little bit with the models that information comes from here, goes there, then comes back, then this. So it is very helpful. I don't really care. You see the most tracks that says the decassate, means like they cross. That's another way to map our functions based on our brain. You'll see that we can slice it in a way, or we can see from the side, and then you can say hands, movement of the hands is mainly on this part, and movement of the limbs is on this part, and maybe movements of the face is on this part. Okay. I guess that's fine. Going into a lot of detail. The only thing I would like to remember from here, you see here how it looks like, and you see the dorsal root, and also you see the ventral root. That information comes from the outside, the sensory neuron, through the dorsal part of it, and then some the potential is leaving from the ventral part. Okay, that's what I want you to remember. Many levels, we'll talk about that. All right, so we'll talk about a lot of models today, and models are not perfect, and we've been over a lot of different models because we started with one, and then of course this explains this, the other one cannot be explained, so then we'll have another model, and then we'll have another model. In general, they're useful um, because we can understand the brain better and we can teach it even better. All right. So this is just one model. It's a model of CNS functioning, and you can see that this information starting from the cerebral cortex, right, goes towards the brainstem, the basal ganglia, and then you can see how it comes back to the cerebral cortex. Information also is coming from the outside, so the sensory signals on the left side is where the eyes are, so they come in information. Limbic system goes information. So there is a lot of action going on, no matter how you see it, like in terms of planning, execution, or regulation. But we'll talk about a lot of models today, trying to explain how our brain works. It's a 3.5-pound muscle, right? But it's so amazing, and we barely know anything about it. But just for the little bit that we know, you'll see how amazing it is and how our bodies are designed in a way that it's just mind blowing. All right, feed forward and feedback. In psychology and motor behavior, you'll talk a lot. You will find a lot of models, and models can be feed forward or feedback. You can see now that the motor commands are organized and planned, initiate from the brain and go towards the spinal cord. It's a feed forward model, right? Now, if there is kind of some kind of information coming back in the spinal cord in or the brain, um, that is a feedback. That's feedback. Okay. Now, as you can see, that's very important. How much and one sensory feedback is used to change the feedback commands is highly variable, and that's one way to answer why we have inhibitory potentials. Because something happened in between us sending an AP to excite the muscle fiber, initiate movement, and from actually initiating, and then we'll make adjustments. Or we want to stop the whole movement overall. Okay. Sometimes feedback is used to entirely initiate and drive the motor commands. That's called feedback control. Okay. Again, we're talking about models and theories. So this is a specific model that we see here. Feed forward would be the solid lines. So from the brain, we'll have some kind of planning, then initiation, then commands, effect, and then it's done. Now, the feedback is we get feedback. And as you can see here, there's some kind of comparison. So we have something in mind that will happen, and something's actually happening. So by comparing what we thought will happen with what it's about to happen or is happening, then we can make adjustments. That happens through feedback. It's another model. Right, you know how much I like this question, so why do we even talk about this? Who cares, right? 2 points. 2 points. Um, we're talking about high levels of complexity and adaptability. Excuse me. So every person is very different, and there's so many model plans. None of them is the same, even for the same person doing the same movement, because the environment a lot of times changes, and your own body is changing based on nutrition, sleep, anything. You're tired, you're excited, whatever you are, right? So this tells you that if we want to improve skilled motor performance, so take that into account and actually take that into advantage, because we can include variability in the movement. And that's something that we can include into practice, right? And try to train our mind and body to different make it create different motor plans. Also, because the brains of individuals are different, individuals, any kind of individuals, no matter how you want to group them, they initiate motor skills differently, which means again, and we've said that in 212 and 214 and our courses, but here we see from a motor behavior perspective that uh, when you prescribe exercise, it should be customized, individualized. Okay, the brain can change as a result of practice and training. Facts. Okay, hashtag facts. So different practice, different training, different results, but also different same practice to different people, different results. So we need to have that in mind. Now, after we keep doing the same thing, we usually see two things. Either less brain area is activated or different brain areas are activated. Okay, so one is more efficient. The other one can be from some kind of interconnected, different connection between the different parts of the brain, right? So here, for example, we see through an fMRI, A is how it changed it from A to B, how it's changed the different areas of brain are activated as we're learning something. Changes include, and you can go over this by yourself slowly, more synaptic connections, right? More neurotransmitter receptor sites, more efficient neurotransmitter receptor sites. So it is amazing. The human brain is trying to adapt all the time. More efficient neural pathways, so it finds better way to communicate the different regions or the information and find more efficient neural pathways, because remember when you did an exercise for the first time, deadlifts, bench press, or any kind of in your sport, your brain started adjusting up to a point now that it's changed so much that you are doing now the same movement with such a flow, right? Of course, there's a lot of adaptations based on training. You can see cell proliferation, lung or brain tissue loss, changes in areas of brain activation, all of them. You can just go one by yourself. Here, what we see is we have exercise, right? And we have people, this is for older adults, that exercise is changing all these metabolic syndrome and all these chronic diseases that older adults have. If they go through exercise, the exercise changes their effect on all this human growth hormone, DNA activity, oxygen transport, the same with inflammation as well, in a way that can increase brain health, cognition, plasticity, and so on and so forth. That's how important exercise is in terms of CNS adaptations in older adults. Nothing really fancy here that you can go over by yourselves. Yeah, I hope you know what the cross transfer effect, especially the people who go for AT, athletic trainers or physical therapists, right? That if you there are different ways to explain that. Let's say you hurt your right arm and you have a cast and you can't use it. If you use your left arm, there are benefits that are being transferred to your right hand. Okay, so in case you don't know what it is, search it, look it up. That's important, especially if you're going for athletic training or physical therapy. All right, I think that's the last thing for this chapter, CNS fatigue. We usually talk about muscle fatigue. Let me prove to you that's not the only case of fatigue, right? You see glycogen depletion, yeah, okay, cool. All this are great. Let's go and see this. So here we'll have the central activation ratio, okay? And then we have bicep contraction, MVIC is maximal voluntary isometric contraction. So we have two cases. We have A and we have B. Case A, no fatigue. So we tell the person to do their MVIC, 120 newtons. And then we let them rest. We put stimulators, we put electrical electrodes in the muscle so we can initiate some stimulation at the same time. And by doing that, what we're trying to see is activate all the muscle fibers that were activated through some kind of stimulation of the nervous system. Okay, so we'll let the same we'll let the same person rest. So in the first voluntary contraction, we got 120, and then the person rests, and we do the same thing plus electrical stimulation, and we get 124. So there wasn't a lot that wasn't activated or recruited. And in a healthy individual, an active individual, this ratio is very close to 1. Now we do the same thing and we make sure the person is fatigued, is tired. So that's post-fatigue. We do the same thing after we're sure that they've done it and they're already tired. We tell them to do the MVIC, same thing. We'll get 80 newtons. Now, like we get them tired again, and we tell them to do the same thing plus stimulation, and we get 104, which gives us a ratio of 0.77. So in the second case scenario, we can prove that it wasn't just the muscle that was tired. It was also the nervous system, because you can see the big difference. So it was 120, 124, and 80, 104. So there was a lot of muscle fibers that didn't get stimulated because the nervous system was tired to stimulate them. So now with electrical stimulation, we go up to 1.104, so 0.77, right? So this comes to prove that the nervous system can get tired as well. Yeah, that's it with this chapter. I'm gonna stop sharing this one. I'll go chapter 2, and I'll go to chapter 3. 1 second. There we go. All right. Peripheral neuromuscular mechanisms in executing movement, just executing. All right, the motor unit. We talked about the motor unit, right? There's a motor neuron and all the muscle fibers it innervates. Right? And what's the ratio? The innervation ratio is the number of muscle fibers per single motor neuron. Okay, we've covered all this before, even during this semester. We also have said that all MUs contain the same type of muscle fiber. Muscle fibers are distributed within the muscle, almost. We see here again the dorsal and ventral part of it, and motor unit A, motor unit B. You see that type 2 has more innervation over there, more units, okay? More innervation to the muscle. This is a great table. I want you to just stay here a little and study and make sure you understand it. So you see that based on size, how the characteristics of MUs and motor neurons, and you see that concerning, for example, recruitment order, first we will recruit the slow tweets, and then the intermediate, and then the fast tweets, because it's a matter of threshold. First of all, we will recruit the lower threshold, and then if we need more and more and more. Okay? Within MU, you know that already. All the muscle fibers fire or none. That's how it is. And we start from small to large. We just said that. But also, when we de-recruit them, we start from large and go to small. Okay? Uh, the size principle is a result of neuron cell size. Smaller neurons require less energy for activation. That's an explanation. The nervous system regulates three basic functions to control force output: recruitment of motor neurons, rate coding, you'll see, has to do with the frequency, and coordination of motor units and muscles between them. Okay, let's talk about recruitment. Muscle force output can be changed by increasing or decreasing the number of active motor neurons. We already know that. Um, Activating more motor units generally results in a large increase in the amount of active muscle tissue. All MUs may not be activated until 80 to 90% of maximum force output is necessary. Okay? What do we see here on the beginning of when we stand and then we walk and then we run and then we jump? In the beginning, we start with the slow twitch motor units and then we need the intermediate. So then we recruit the intermediate and the slow twitch. And then if we need more, we recruit fast twitch and intermediate and slow. Okay? Yeah, so here we have the rate coding we talked before. Right? In the first case, so the muscle force here, we have one twitch, and there's some time in between them, and there's a second twitch. Okay, so it doesn't add to that in the A case. B case, we have summation. So A, B, C, well, A, B, C, sorry, we have 1, 2, 3 twitches, and there's summation of that result. Like B adds on the A, and C B adds on the B and F. The third one adds on the second and the first. That's what I'm trying to say. And it reaches the 20 hertz. Okay. Now the last one is called tetanus, right? It keeps adding, but it can't go any higher than 40. So if we keep firing, it won't really change anything if it goes to the maximum we can go, which is in this case 40. Right now I'm talking about scenario C. All right, what do we see here? That velocity or speed has an effect on the activation, on the fire, or the rate coding, right? The firing rates. You see, it can be from 5 to 120 hertz. So one way to control that is speed. And you see the black line going up. It's really smooth, slow kind of contraction. When we do some kind of ballistic, which is the orange one, you can see that it starts really fast and it just drops. Coordination is arguably the most important way the nervous system controls muscle force output. I've said it before, I think, and I'll say it again. The nervous system is the boss. The nervous system controls the muscle. Muscle just has to, in the majority of cases, right, the vast majority of cases, muscle just follows whatever the nervous system says. That's it. Now, coordination can be intermuscular in the same muscle or intramuscular between muscles, right? All muscle groups. Okay, so here what we see is we're trying to figure out action on the thinner muscle, and there's we have a device that is on the surface. We have another device that you can see it's in the muscle. B shows the EMG that we're getting from within in the muscle, and C shows the information we're getting the EMG, which both of them are clean from the surface. Very similar, but not the same. Coordination is expressed in three ways: intramuscular coordination between MU firing rate and recruitment, discharge part patterning, and compartmental coordination. Okay, all this again show how amazingly designed we are. All right. Normal contraction, we have a combination of recruitment and rate coding. Dependent on many factors, small muscles may have full motor unit recruitment at 30% capacity. Large muscles, 80 to 90%. Right? Different kind of contractions, static versus dynamic, concentric, eccentric, different results, combinations. Nothing too fancy here. Discharge patterning. Muscle wisdom is something nice that I want to mention at least. Slowing discharge intentionally, right, during fatiguing conditions to maintain force output. Right? Because we said here that the coordination or the force output in general has to do with rate and recruitment, right? And here we say, like, as we're getting tired, let's bring down the rate at least, just for laters, okay? And maybe we'll just go towards synchronization to have more force output. Compartmentalization, okay, nothing too fancy here, okay? You can figure that out by yourselves. Based on muscle morphology, neural recruitment, biomechanical function, this is a great example between deltoid adduction and flexion, how different muscles are activated based on maximum contraction. Fancy here. Following strength training, there may be fewer motor units recruit for a given effort, given weight, for example, or delayed recruitment for other units. Okay, so remember, the first strength gains that we get after strength training is because of neuromuscular coordination, because of this. Okay, and as we become better, that variability becomes less. During mobilization or retraining, that's important. The motor behavior properties are reversed from that of training. So the way we change when we start training, the opposite direction we change when we stop training, for whatever reasons. Here we have, that's pretty cool if you see it. So we have pre and post. Pre is before somebody start doing some kind of pedaling on a bike. And then after 16 efforts, tries. So you see how different is the intramuscular coordination. Solus, very different. Very different the post, right? Vaso lateralis, very different. Realis anterior, very different. So our body, as we keep doing the same activity, it learns. Neuromuscularly, we coordinate differently. And you can see it here. Okay? Hamstrings, not so different. All right. We've talked about that before. CE, the contractile element, and then we have the elastic elements, the EE. Okay, we talked about this. We talked about this. What I want to make sure we understand is here, well, again, if we remember the length tension, we at the resting length, we have the highest force for the CE, right? But the highest for EE is when it's elongated, when we stretch it. So we combine it, you see the combined with the black line, which is a combined force tension curve. Cool. Hope you remember that. We just mentioned it like maybe 2 weeks ago. Same things, very nicely depicted here. You see that the optimal length is when we can have, you see that's the sarcomere, right? And we can have most bridging, okay, during that optimal length range. Now, if it's understretched, right, or overstretched, they're too far away and they cannot grab on themselves, right, on each other. So we're looking for the range where we have that overlap, the maximum overlap of actin and myosin, which is from 7 to 130. Nothing crazy here. We talked about that, right? We can produce more force in the centric phase, okay, and in lower speeds. Different explanations about why we have that strength shortening movement, the SCC advantage of the SCC cycle, right? So the SS cycle or SSC, we have more time for build-up, force build-up, maximize reflex potentiation, using of elastic energy recall, and saved energy through preload. We've talked about this before. You see somebody before preloading and after preloading, how they can produce more muscle tension. Okay. Stretching before strength and power performance may reduce performance. We've talked about it. Right? We've talked about it. It's great about maintaining muscle health, particularly in the age population. Yes, but that's different. Plyometrics, we talked about plyometrics. We have the stretch shortening cycle, right? As we do them more and more and more, we become more rapid, and it will have better complete transfer of force from the tissue to mechanical work. Okay. Now, moment arms in terms of force and speed. So we're all designed a little bit different. And if you check your biceps and somebody else's biceps and where the tendon is anchored, maybe be closer to somebody else or further away. If you have a longer moment arm, you can produce more force. If you have a shorter moment arm, you will produce less force, but you will be faster. Okay, so this has to do with the muscle insertion. We're all different. Some people are faster, some people are more powerful. That may be something that has to do with this. We know about fiber types. Okay, all right. So that's the second. Wow, two more. I'm in there. I know, right? All right. Sensory system, same thing. Yep. All right. Peripheral sensory systems. Sensory nervous system responsible for movement monitoring and relaying information back to the CNS. Right. Sensory detection enables us to be aware of the external. We talk about any internal. If your tummy aches, that's internal. Temperature is from the outside. And we talk about homeostasis. That plays a role, of course. We get the information so we can go back to that equilibrium that we want to. Also, sensory system responsible initiating reflexes. Right? You put your hand on the stove. Right? Okay. A lot of kind of receptors, we can differentiate them in many different ways. One is mechanoreceptors, right? Thermoreceptors. That's a type of information they can transfer, right? But also, where are they? Exteroreceptors, proprioceptors. We'll talk about proprioceptors. Interoreceptors. This is an example. You see information now coming from the muscle spindle, the Golgi tendon, and the joint kinesthetic receptor. It goes towards the spine, dorsal part, right? It can go all the way to the brain or not. Information may come from the brain as well. It depends on what we're talking about now, that scenario. And then we'll have information going back to the muscle through the motor neuron. Here, I don't care for you to know anything. Just see how they are different located and they have different functions, many of them. So we have a lot of receptors, that have different thresholds, and they can send different kinds of information towards the CNS. Function. Stimulus causes the receptor to form action potentials that are sent along the sensory neuron to the spinal cord. Okay, that's the main function. You see different functions here, okay? You can read that by yourselves. The stretch reflex, okay? So here, what were we seeing? So we talked about, what am I trying to find? What's the word? Muscle spindle, yes, okay. So, sorry there. Okay, so muscle spindle detects some information that, let's say, somebody's grabbing your arm and trying to pull it, so the muscle is stretching too fast. So there's information leaving from the muscle spindle through the afferent system route goes to your spine. Then there we have some kind of decision going on, and there's information leaving the spine. Two kinds of information. One is going through the biceps, and you can see that's very simplistic, and another one going to the tricep. So the muscle spindle here initiates the whole thing. The two kinds of information are coming back. The one that goes to the bicep says, contract the bicep, so you can pull back, right? In order to contract one muscle that is impaired with somebody else, the other muscle has to relax. So the other information that goes to the antagonist muscle says, relax triceps, relax. Okay? So that's how it's happening. I don't care about this at this point. Yeah. Okay, Golgi tendon. Golgi tendon is a little bit different, or in a way that is pretty much the information that's coming back is completely opposite. First of all, it's in the tendon. The other one was in the muscle, right? We talked about. So here, it inhibits the homonymous muscle, so the same name of muscle that the information is leaving from, it will inhibit that muscle. So in this case, it will relax the bicep and it will activate the tricep. That's what GTOs do. And then all kinds of receptors. Let's talk about, this one comes here to tell you that there are ways to, again, our body is amazingly designed, and in this case, our nervous system is trying to protect the joint, so it works those muscles synergistically in a way that protects the joint. And let's say, in the case of injury, your quads hurt when you're squatting, for example, it will find some way to activate other muscles to help your quad from not being activated that much to protect it. That's a very simplistic example, but you get the idea. The cross extensor reflex. Okay. You walk your dog, you're playing with your phone, holding the leash, playing with your phone, holding your leash, playing your phone. And with your peripheral vision, that we're going to talk about today in a little bit, you see a pile of poop. So as you're about to step on the poop, you have the cross extensor reflex. As you're stepping on the poop, we have a combined activation on both limbs. So on that leg that you're about, or you're just stepping on it, we have a flexor activation and an extensor deactivation, inhibition, so you can lift that leg. And then the other leg, we have the exact opposite, right? So the other leg has a flexor inhibition and an extensor activation, so you can transfer the weight all on the other leg, and that would be activated. Does that make sense? Opposite kind of actions from the opposite muscle, so you can lift the leg and not step on the poop, but at the same time shift your weight on the other leg and stay upright. All right, vestibular, labyrinthine receptors. So here, what happens is in our Here, there, we have some kind of liquid, right? So when you have a bottle, if you turn the bottle, the liquid will turn too. So when we turn our head, the liquid moves. So that gives us information through the receptors that we are tilting to the right, right? So here we'll have some reflexes, and you can do it at your home. Like this is normal position. If you turn your head back, you're extending. You're most likely going to extend your arms, right? If you tuck it in, it'll just flex. Right, extend your right arm, left, your left arm, right? Visual systems here. Visual system provide feedback and feed-forward information. Actually, the information we're getting from the visual systems is, in terms of feed-forward, is amazing, okay? All right, so we have the two kinds of areas here. No matter where you focus, you're focusing on an area, but at the same time, you're looking at the other part, right? Through your peripheral vision. So you have the foveal sharp, where you're locating, but you have peripheral vision. If something happens in the peripheral vision, you detect it, then you change, the whole thing changes, and that may become your foveal area, and then the other one may become your peripheral. Yes? So this is more about the ambient vision, and this is more about the focal vision. Okay, cool, cool. You can switch from one to the other, and actually you should try to switch in specific sports like a quarterback, right? Mm-hmm. Here is this image. We are using a device to detect changing gaze, what you're looking at, and how that can change, right? Focal vision feedback is sent to higher brain centers. Ambient information is read to brain areas involved in initiating movement, and to a lesser extent, delay 100 to 160 milliseconds. Okay, the last dot here is important. So, first of all, before that, we get information right from a lot of sources. It says here, though, irregular changing or absent sensory information causes the sensory motor system to adapt by placing greater emphasis or weighting in some information. So if I go try to walk this room, right, with the lights on, it will be different in the emphasis I'm going to give compared to lights off, because I cannot see. I'll try to touch more in here, right? Same thing happens when an accident happens and you lose some kind, any kind of information that you could, any kind of source that you will help you receive information. You go deaf. You will rely on something else more, right? Our brains are amazing, and they're trying to adapt all the time. Here, the only thing I want to tell you is about the central, the CGP central pattern generators that you see there. I'm going to talk about them a lot in a little bit. In order for us to walk, it has to be a CPG that controls these two muscles that you see over there, and how they're gonna extend or not in order for us to walk, right? That's all I want you to remember from that. And I'm gonna stop sharing this, and we have one just more. I'm in there. This one is not an easy one, but we'll figure it out, as we always do. Chapter 5, last chapter for tonight. All right, movement models. For any given movement, there are numerous ways of movement that the movement could be done, right? So we have a lot of degrees of freedom, same result, but different ways to do it. Go this way, go this way, go this way. So our main, when we have a problem, and that's also in psychology, when we talk about executive functioning or problem solving, our mind is trying to set the problem space first, figure out the alternatives, pick the best. Okay, in order to, there are a lot of degrees of freedom, but we need to pick one. Okay, so we need some models to explain how this works. And models, there are different kinds of models. As you can see, they serve two main purposes: have a framework by which to understand how movements are formally executed, and also give us a device for rehabilitation practice and training. Also, that's what we're doing right now. Right? We're trying to learn about this. So models will help us. In general, we have feed forward and feedback models. We have also open loop and closed loop. Closed loop will have feedback in it. So the information will come back and close as a loop. The open loop is the hierarchy is top-down approach, which is feed forward. Okay, not so much feedback. Feedback is more important in the closed loop models. This is exactly what we talk about: brain to muscles, feed forward, open loop. Minimum important the feedback. Closed loop, yes, control center, the brain again, muscles again, sure, but then we'll have feedback. So loops back, and we'll have that kind of direction of information and movement. Let's see hierarchy. We'll see how we can see the models differently, such as hierarchical versus heterarchical. Hierarchical models, you see, you have the brain all the way up, which gives information to subordinates and then to more subordinates. So we have a top-down approach, okay? And there's minimum feedback going on there. So the owners of the team give specific instructions to the coaches of the team, and the coaches of the team give specific instructions to the players. There you go. That's it. In a heterarchical, there's way more interaction. By directional, you see arrows, right? Still the owners, still all the players. Yeah, sure. There's a common goal, which is the stadium. The common goal in the middle. Everybody's helping towards the common goal. Direct connection, always by directional movement. And you see a group of the circle inside the circle may be muscles that have to coordinate with each other, right, to produce specific movement. So this model is a little bit different. There is different distribution, right? A lot of information that is bidirectional. All right, so in the reflex actions, the reflex models are the simplest models of motor control. And we're going to talk about them a lot. We will talk about hardwired neural circuits today, which I think usually it's fun to talk about them in class. Let's talk about this. So don't freak out if you are a cat person or in general somebody who loves animals. So here the toothed cat, you see it is supported on the head and on the back, right? And they went and cut off the brain nerve right behind the neck. So there was no way for the brain to send the potential to the rest of the body. Okay, cat still alive. So they put the cat up there, and they you see that treadmill thingy at the bottom. So they put those EMGs on the legs of the cat, and they start moving the treadmill. Guess what happens? The legs of the cat start moving, which proves that there are some hardwired signal or combination of signals that are not located in the brain. What? So we have some kind of reflexes or movement, predetermined movements that are not stored in the brain. So they don't necessarily start from there. They're located somewhere else. Okay. And we have evidence about this happening in the human limb. Also here, right, we have somebody who had an accident, right? Hemiplegic. They can fell from, let's say, the waist down. And using that device, once we start the treadmill, legs start moving. Okay. So that was simple. Let's go to something more complex. About the equilibrium point hypothesis, command set stretch reflex threshold of the uncontrolled manifold hypothesis posits that the brain activates a series of synergistic muscle actions. Did I miss anything here? No, we're good. Synergies. That's what we're gonna talk about today. Synergies are samples of not today, right now, or groupings of muscle and limbs that work together as a functional unit. Synergies involve inherent neural pathways, muscle and limb biomechanical properties, and learned behaviors. Synergistic actions reduce degrees of freedom and simplify CNS planning. Let's experiment. You can do it by yourself. You can put something in the middle of your desk, right? Same distance between your arms and that, and try to touch it. You'll touch at the same time. If you put it closer to your right hand, you try to touch it again, you'll touch at the same time. So there is some kind of synergy going on right here. Okay. Also, there's another example here. As you're sitting right now, take your right hand, point, okay, and let's try to go like we are going counterclockwise, and then stretch your right leg, right leg, and try to go counterclockwise. Try to go clockwise. What's going to happen? Your hand is going to stop. They're going to try to go the same direction, which again shows that there's grouping not only between limbs, like hands, but also hand and leg. Okay? Hierarchical models could not explain everything, so let's talk about hierarchical control. Movements here are considered centrally programmed, pre-programmed. Precise manipulation of movement characteristics comes from a continually involved CNS controller. We'll have the schema theory. We'll talk about a couple of theories. Schema theory talks about a generalized motor program, GMP, and schemata. Okay? Schemata are separate memory components in which movements are recognized and recalled. What? Okay. So we know what we've done before, and we just activate it in a way. We use it for the future when we do something similar. Here, we have trying to do some kind of tricep extension, right? And you can see that in the beginning, we activate the tricep to extend it, and then towards the end, we stop activating it, right? And then at the very end, we activate again the tricep to create some kind of stabilization in the joint. The opposite happens with the bicep. Okay, when the tricep is activated, you can see at the bottom, which is the black line. Again, let's talk about the black lines first. The biceps are activating when the triceps are not activated. Now, when we block that movement, and again, we're getting information from EMG, we get the same kind of information, which proves that we have some schemata that are stored, and we will act the same way, even when sometimes we change the parameters. Okay? That's a bigger so you can see here. So the neural command was pre-programmed and it wasn't affected by the feedback because it was a block movement. It didn't really happen. Another evidence, and we usually do it in class. I'm like, hey, you, whatever come up, get a marker, try to write your name with your non-dominant hand, and then write it with your dominant hand. They look alike. How is it possible? Right? So this is based on the schema theory that will have those pre-programmed commands. But that wasn't enough, so we need more models, and we create the internal models. So here we emphasize more on the PNS, and more specifically on the efference copy. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm just going to show you the interaction, how everything starts from the controller, and then it goes to the control object, and then it goes back, right? It goes towards the visual cortex, and then this goes back towards the controller, and so on and so forth. So much feedback. In any case, no matter what kind of model you use or you believe in more or whatever, there are 3 points that are common. So let's stop here for a second. 1, the nervous system is most concerned with movement outcomes, not muscle actions. So the nervous system cares about doing something or not doing something, not which muscle it will activate. It will adapt in any way possible to produce the outcome. 2, the nervous system must take into account psychological, physiological, and biomechanical properties of the body, the movement goals, and the environment. So a lot of information going on. Again, our brain is amazing. There exists hardwired, preformed, and synergistic movements that form building blocks for more complex movements. Okay? One more thing, there's a system model, which is a newer kind of approach, and this one, it's not, as you can see, that's the only thing I'm going to mention. It's not focusing on the psychological, regulatory, locomotion, all these things. It's focusing more on the interaction of the individual with the task and the environment. That's how it sees it, right? So the interaction of the individual with the task and the environment, that will produce the movement, whatever movement. Constraints are important here. I just want to stay here for a little bit. They can be task constraints. So it's based on the constraints. So if you're diving, you don't really need any cardiorespiratory fitness level. Environmental constraints, if it's windy or it's raining or it's cold. Individual constraints, tall, short, big, small, whatever, right? Here we have the homeostasis, we have that equilibrium, and we have that stable state. If we change the stable state, we're trying to adapt, and in between the old stable state and the new stable state, there's a phase called transition phase. An example here is from walking to running. So what we want to say here, usually one parameter is the main parameter, the most important parameter, which will change everything. In this example is speed, and everything else, such as gait or mass movement, vertical center, mass movement, coordination, are things that will change second in like they're secondary parameters, right? Called order parameters. They're not that important. They're not the main parameter. So here, if we start changing speed on the treadmill, right, that's the factor, that's the parameter that will changes from walking to running. Okay. Destabilizing dynamic patterns. That's something. Why are we mentioning those dynamic systems and patterns? because it is important for you tomorrow as coaches, physical therapists, athletic trainers. You can use them, you can manipulate them to get whatever you want to get, or even as an athlete, right? Do it by yourself. So you need to destabilize a current state in order to be able to be stable in a new state. Example is strength training. You break down muscle to create more muscle tissue to now be in a different stable state, right? Same with any kind of drill that you may design for your trainees tomorrow. But as you can see here, just changing one parameter again and again and again is not going to produce positive outcomes forever. We produce overtraining syndrome. Perception action coupling. We've talked about that before. What is that? What is that? Well, we talked about our perception is very important of what's going on because we're basing our actions based on our perception. Okay, so here we're running. When we perceive that the wall is really close, we stop. Okay, here we're manipulating the environment. So this is a virtual reality environment. So that person is looking at something like a corridor in front of her, right? And when they make it move faster, she starts walking faster because she thinks that she's there. What we're trying to say here is that you need to understand that if we change the environment as coaches, that will change the way we perceive it and the way we move. And that's really important. So for us practitioners, if we need, let's say you have a kicker in football. That person is great during practice, but when it matters during the game, he's not. So one thing can be psychological. Another thing, though, can be maybe it's because of the crowd, of the lights, of the noise. So if we're trying to train that person for those specific environments, maybe we should try to simulate those during practice, right? Virtual reality, that is very common now, for example, in football and for quarterbacks, they're playing all these plays, they're going over the plate without getting hit. But they're trying to create situations that everything looks very similar so they can practice in as much as possible real life conditions. Same thing here. If you want to make that, the bottom line is see the environment in a more holistic way. Kicking just the ball won't make it far enough. There's so many other variables that you have to take into consideration and put inside your practice so the brain can learn to adapt into that. So when you take them in the game, the practice was very similar to the game. So all this can transfer to the game and be more successful, increase performance. That was it, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it's an hour, 20 minutes, so a lot of time, but I hope you liked it. And don't forget, you have LO 13 to LO 16 for Sunday, office hours tomorrow from 8 to 12:30, and synchronous meeting this Wednesday from 8 to 8:45. I hope to see you guys tomorrow or Wednesday. In the meantime, lift intention. I'll have it too.